Hello, everybody. How are you all doing? Before we go ahead and get started for the day, I want to quickly check if you can hear me loud and clear. Just type in one or two on your chat so that you can hear me. Then we can get started. We have got an exciting guest to discuss today, a lot of things, and we'll get started as soon as possible. So, can I get some thumbs up or number one if you can hear me loud and clear? Okay, let us get started. So before we go ahead and get started, let us introduce our guest and what we are going to do in the session, and then we'll go into the session itself. So this is Mar here, and I'm a solutions architect. I have been doing this role for almost 16 years now, and the people who are familiar with me will know me in the YouTube community. I've released plenty of videos, couple of courses in Udemy, and my GitHub profile is there. If you want to talk to me, reach out in any of those platforms, and I'm happy to discuss with you. And today's guest is Vaibhav, a long-term friend of mine. I've been working in the past with him for at least quite a few years, let us say, and he has shown me a lot of tricks in AWS, and I'm really amazed by his skill on certain domains. For example, authentication is something that he's really, really amazing. And another cool thing that I know about him is he's a football fanatic. Just to share a personal story, once he told me that he went out to play football in minus degree temperatures. I was like, wow, he must be really crazy to play football at that cold temperature. But enough of me alone talking about him. I'm going to let him introduce himself. Hey, Vaibhav, if you can hear me, go ahead and introduce yourself to the general community.
Hello, guys. Hello, everyone. This is Vaibhav Shah. I'm a solutions architect, a cloud enthusiast with primary focus on AWS. Uh, my technology journey started about 15 years back, and yeah, I started as a humble system admin and started working my way up, and then also did a small stint as a network engineer. Uh, Before landing onto cloud. I think that was in 2009, I guess. And since then, I've been working primarily on AWS and Azure, mainly AWS, but of course, you cannot skip the other CSPs when you're working in that domain. And have been doing a lot of projects encompassing building up the foundation, migration of applications from on-prem from one cloud to another, or creating custom applications. Uh, it could be it could be just a code-based application being hosted on the cloud, or migrating uh, a custom application on AWS.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's get started here. So before we go ahead and dive into the session, I want to brief a few things about the session itself, what we are going to discuss, so that we have the context ready and we have the right expectations for everybody. So today's session is welcome for all levels of people, whether you're a beginner in the cloud or whether you're already in the cloud and you are looking for improving your skills in the cloud. So we welcome all the different kinds of personas who are dealing with cloud. And in this Meet Your Solutions Architect session, what we are going to discuss is how a solutions architect works in a typical day-to-day life, what they do, what projects they work on, what actual projects what happens in an actual project typically, where it starts from customer to where it goes to the solution. So all those things. If you have any questions during the session, use the hashtag questions in your comments, or if you have a suggestion for us so that we want to follow up, go ahead and use the hashtag suggestions so I can easily pick up in the comment section. So the level of depth will be somewhere around, let us say, 100 or 200. If you follow the Amazon logic of difficulty, we'll be staying pretty much at the entry level to little bit of intermediate level. We'll not be going deep dive into the technology spectrum of things. But at the same time, we would like to know that I would like to inform that there is a certain level of expectancy. We will not be dealing with what is an EC2, what is an VPC, or what is an IAM. So we assume that you already know those things, and then we go ahead and see how architectures are built in AWS. So that is on how the session is. So I would like the people who are listening to the chat, go ahead and give a warm welcome to Vaibhav, give a thumbs up for him for taking the time to talk to us. Let's get started. The first thing that I would like to know, Vaibhav, is I know you mentioned that you started as a network admin and then you gradually progressed it. What made you make the choice, right? You are doing network engineering, you are spending a lot of time there, you have a skill there, and learning cloud is quite a different thing, right? Or did you feel it's a natural progression?
Yeah, I think at the time, as in cloud was AWS was very new. We started. I was working for a startup, and we landed. We were thinking on to moving on to a better hosted environment. We were doing a lot of hosting from with different data center providers, and AWS felt more comfortable, more easier. We felt more in control. Me and the team that I was working with, they were very passionate. So I think it was a natural move for us, and I think
Mm-hmm.
it was a lucky choice. I think at the time.
Just diving a little bit deeper there, do you think is it any difficult for a person who knows Windows to get into cloud, or you find it more easier for people who know Linux to get into the cloud?
Yeah, I think it does not depend on if you are more inclined towards Linux or Windows. Yeah, I think it's more on how you take newer challenges. As an it's a new venue, and I think the way of working is similar whether you're working on Windows or Linux.
Hmm.
You're still going to work on Windows or Linux on AWS or any other cloud service provider.
Hmm.
So, in my opinion, you need to be passionate. You need to have your basics right, and I think the progression would be natural more than forced.
Okay, okay. So if I just stretch that question a little bit, what you mean is being passionate and ready to learn and adopt it. So does that mean that anybody without an technology background also can get into cloud?
Yeah, I think so. I know a couple of very close friends, and yeah, my brother as well. They were not very really as in into technology and technical stuff, but
Hmm.
uh, at least one of my friend found it very easy to learn AWS and understand the concepts, and then use that in managing a project. Yeah, not just doing technical stuff all the time, but
Hmm.
understanding the concepts is also important. So I think yeah, it's like I said, it's just about how you take it.
Okay, okay, that's nice because quite often I hear this question from the community, and even today also I see a comment from somebody saying that can I move careers, can I switch careers, how to get on the cloud? So that's what I wanted to clear. What is your opinion? Have you seen that? So obviously you have seen at least two personal experiences where people have done that.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Nice, nice. So let us move on a little bit to knowing you more. So what is your superpower? Like you mentioned that you started as a network engineer, now you are in the cloud, and I personally know that you are fantastic in the authentication domain. So what do you consider as your superpower?
Yeah. Yeah, primarily, I like to solve challenges from identity perspective, cross-platform perspective, but primarily I love consolidation and standardization more than any technical part, as in specific identity or technical part. So from the foundations perspective, uh, from the landing zone perspective, I always feel that if you give me a very complex scenario or an environment that has to be standardized, that I would really love to do that.
Nice, nice. That seems like ideal to be suited for an enterprise scenario, right? Where you have technology starting from mainframes all the way to the cloud. You have this entire spread of technologies and you want to standardize them. That is a very common requirement I see in enterprises. Yeah, is that where you really like to work on, or is it like you feel like even startups are moving really really fast, right? They have created different kinds of workloads and the workloads are changing. Few years back it was a three-tier architecture, now it is like full stack development. So where do you find it going?
Yeah, that's true. I think it is primarily found in enterprises where you have a full spread
Mm-hmm.
and you have a lot more room to maneuver and work around and do consolidation or standardization.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but the core pillars don't change. As in, I've seen a lot of startups when they do it right from day one, they really save a lot of money
Mm-hmm.
and they get things right. As in, the technology is, yeah, this is a phase that I always use. Technology is not perfect. You have to use it to your advantage. So primarily, when you do it right from the start, I think you can reap the benefits very quickly.
Yep. Yep. Well said. Well said. Because at enterprises, you have diverse workloads, right? So you need to know a little bit about that legacy, and then you need to have people, and then consolidate them and convince them for doing that across the board. Yeah, I hear you there. Let us move on. So this is one thing that I always found it very very difficult, even when I was starting out doing this role. What does a solutions architect do? Like they do they need to know everything, or what do they do in a typical day? Can you walk us through like what you do in a typical workday life?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. As in, yeah, as in solutions architect is a very broad term, and yeah, without context, they're always expected to know everything, all
Mhm.
spectrums of technologies, which is never the case. As in, um yeah, primarily you can think of solution architect as the central point who can find as an experts within their own teams to
Mhm.
help for a specific problem or to get a solution ready. Um, but on the overall, I think if you look at my day to day activity, I think it's primarily consulting,
Mhm.
discussing it with different DevOps teams, dev teams, infra teams, primarily infra and DevOps teams. That is where I work with, as in those are the teams that I work with. Uh, but apart from consulting, I think I do a lot of solution designs.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
trying, say, simple POCs of newer things that have come on AWS or some integrations between cloud and on-prem application or things like that. Um yeah, that is my day-to-day work. I think I can divide it into three:
Mhm.
consulting, designing, and solutioning.
Okay. Okay. So it's nice that you put it into this broad category so we can pick and dive deep into some of them. There was this a quick comment from somebody. I'm just going to pick up that comment and then show it here. Does the solution architect spend any time troubleshooting ever, or is it not something that ever happens?
Yeah, that was on my mind. Yeah, troubleshooting. You cannot leave troubleshooting out of uh, any of those items because consulting primarily is troubleshooting because uh, there are some questions or pain points that the customer would come in with,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to troubleshoot that. So, uh, and same as with designing, as in, and if you talk about troubleshooting from support perspective, yes, I do that as well, um, but a lot less than the other things, I would say.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So you put in the three domains, right? So if I ask you to split your time, like 50% goes to this domain, 60%, what would be the split like that? At a very high level. I want you to be exactly accurate, but at a high level, how do you spend your time?
Yeah, of course, the consulting is yeah, about 30% or so with different clients and different projects. I think most of my time goes in designing, basically around 50%. And the remaining is creating new solutions on new patches on new things for any existing application or such.
Okay, nice, nice. Good to understand. I also sometimes feel that should I go and help the team directly and troubleshoot it myself, or should I let the team grow by doing it themselves? So this is always a balance for a solutions architect, right?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I've seen that in my experience where you're starting with a new team, a fresh team, primarily who do not have a lot of AWS or cloud skills. And
Mm-hmm.
that is when you have to spend more time coaching them, and making them understand the basics, and also hand holding them at times.
Mm-hmm.
But in bigger teams, I think that is not needed. So you have to balance that, exactly like you mentioned, as in.
Okay. Although this is not mentioned, I know that from experience this is also sometimes spent. How much time do you spend on coaching or training or taking seminars or webinars, or you mentioned POCs, right? Sometimes you go ahead and talk about adoption of new technologies within your team, like enablement within your organization. Do you coach your junior members in the team?
Yeah, that is part of the job.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so I do that.
Nice, nice. So let us dive a little bit deeper now. I want you to pick up a couple of projects that you are working on, or which is getting you excited in the past, and discuss about it. So what we will do is, I want you to give a brief overview of the different projects that you have worked on, and maybe we can pick one or two. You can tell me that which one you want to like to talk to the audience. Then we can go deeper.
Yeah, sure. I think one of the most exciting projects that I'm still doing is creating a foundation or the landing zone uh, to land different sort of applications onto AWS. But apart from that, I'm also involved in a migration of a security management application. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there are other projects as well that I was working on, but these are the two primary projects that I would like to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the other ones also include creating a complete serverless application on AWS, a custom application to meet a specific requirement. And there was another one that I was working on was for RPA
Mm-hmm.
application to be built on AWS.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nice, nice. We will talk about the RPA project at the end, maybe in the future. That's quite an interesting project since I was partially involved, and the world has evolved quite a bit after we discussed that project. Talking about the security project, let us say we want to take a closer look into that particular project now. Can you tell me where the project started? Like, what did the customer ask you in the beginning, and how did you narrow down from that point to the requirements? Let us walk through the life cycle of that project.
Yeah, it was for a big logistics company that I was working for, and it started with a casual discussion with one of the application consultants saying we are having this application, but it has some problem. When it goes down, it takes about 6 days to come back up. Yeah, generally does not go down, but when it goes down, it just sits down.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was like, then why don't we move it to the cloud?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
his first reaction was, is it even possible? Because it's a very old application. It has different COTS based application within the entire cluster. And primarily, as in the client never felt that it is possible to do it. So he just dropped a line saying, yeah, is it even possible? And that is where the challenge started.
Nice, nice. So it broadly started with a very simple conversation of an application going down, and then you offering is like, why don't you fix it by going to the cloud? So I understand the business context of it. So where did you go from there? Now we understood that, okay, there is an application that needs a stability issue, let us say, or high availability is not there in that application. Now we want to fix that. So what was the next step in that? Or let us say that your business stakeholder allows you to go ahead and move it to the cloud.
Yeah, I think there were two major challenges apart from the application being traditional or legacy application. Um, One was the identity uh, issue that because it was a data center hosted application, it was tightly coupled, and maybe identity was not looked at it the way it should be. And apart from that, being a security management application, uh, uh, network connectivity was an important part. It did connect to all the centers of the client's office, and we really wanted the throughput to be optimal because we were
Mm-hmm.
streaming some footage as well,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a critical application used by some important people within the security office.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, primarily it gave access to uh, the doors and the cameras. So there were alarms also connected to the going to the police and
Okay.
other emergency services. So from that perspective, I think the application was very critical, and that is why they were very worried about moving it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now you understood some more details about it. There was like streaming and access restrictions and alarms that all needs to be working together for the solution to work. So how do you map this to an AWS service now? Now we understand what is required for this application to run. So how do you go from this point to the technology requirements?
Yeah, I think then the next step was to have an open discussion with the court's application suppliers. Uh, what can it support on the cloud? What it cannot,
Mm-hmm.
and then trying to uh, get it to the highest possible level from not only from availability perspective, uh, but the smaller pieces like management access, like um, yeah, the functional access to all the employees
Mm-hmm.
who are using it. So I think that was the next step where we had a discussion with all the suppliers, what is possible, what is not. It did involve pushing them to upgrade their own application. So we had a lot of discussions with the suppliers dev team
Mm-hmm.
of which patches or which upgrades they can bring in faster to allow it to move to the cloud. Um, Not saying that the COTS application were not cloud compatible, but they were uh, as in they were not cloud ready, as in cloud native.
Okay. So, eventually, what happened next? You spoke to them; it was upgraded to different versions. So, if I ask you to pick up a couple of services that you used in AWS, was it like an EC2 instance, or was it in like a marketplace application, or what was it that you were running?
Yeah, we are running EC2 instances, but we are also using workspaces
Mm-hmm.
uh, for functional access. Um, I think in the next phase we might also use AppStream.
Okay.
Uh, uh, but I think as of now, if I talk about their current services, yeah, there were a lot of varied services. SFTP is being used, a native AWS SFTP. Uh, of course, the servers are using EC2 instances
Mm-hmm.
of the way the COTS application are built.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps there were multiple suppliers, and to get all of these suppliers on EC2 instances, but also in a cluster environment was very difficult. So I think that is where the challenge was.
Nice.
Yeah,
So,
primarily using EC2 and workspaces.
EC2 and workspaces. So I understand now why workspaces makes it really easy, right? From thinking from my experience, workspaces authentication is tied to your Active Directory or your corporate directory, and it makes it like you don't now need to migrate your identities. You just give an interface for people to connect to the cloud with your on-premise identities. So it, yeah, I can totally understand why workspace makes great sense here. So if I want to poke around a little bit more, did you do anything about the monitoring aspects of it in the cloud, or was it all on-prem, or is it third-party products?
No, we moved the entire monitoring as well on the cloud. So we are, yeah, we did use a lot of Lambda functions to monitor the endpoints
Mm-hmm.
because, like I said, they were um, as in traditional applications or legacy application.
Mm-hmm.
So So to put them in a cluster, I think in one of the suppliers application we used uh, a Windows failover cluster, um, and on the other one we used AWS native auto scaling.
Mm-hmm.
So to monitor them, I think due to the nature of licenses that these applications were using,
Mm-hmm.
we did use a lot of Lambda functions to monitor as well, to fail them over as well, to update DNS and stuff.
That is interesting, right? You used quite a bit of Lambda functions for orchestrating the different workflows, typical of any cloud architecture, I assume. While I was just browsing through the comments, I think that there is one particular comment that sticks out, and I think I picked it up to show it to you as well. I think we know this gentleman, but anyway, let me read it to you. When it comes to designing an application like this, what is the most challenging part? Was it the people? Was it the technology? Was it the platform? What did you find most challenging?
Yeah, I think with this project, I think it was uh, the stakeholders and the suppliers that was, as in convincing them and pushing them was more challenging,
Mm-hmm.
because my team itself was very pumped up to try new stuff. They were sending new suggestions every day. Why don't we use this? Why don't we uh, uh, do more Lambda and failover instead of using a Windows failover cluster? Why don't we do it with Lambdas? But I think it was difficult to convince the client and the stakeholders that this is what we are going to do and this is how we are going to do it.
That is very interesting. I also have a personal story like this. But before that, if I understand it correctly, are you saying that the getting the people motivated and energized for this project was more difficult than the technology piece? Like the technology was working out, and then you had to get people to believe that it works out.
Yeah, indeed, as in getting them to believe that it will work like this and it will be stable.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was not about motivating them that moving on to cloud would be a good thing, but I think convincing them. I think this is what I've seen not just with this project, but a lot of small and big projects. As in, um, uh, the confidence is built only after it works properly, or yeah, as in after they have seen it working on cloud in a stable way.
Makes sense. So now let us say we spoke about the people aspect of the challenging part, and I'm sure there will be some technical aspects also which are equally challenging. What did you find? I know you might have found answers. That is why you're not putting it at the top category. But what was the most challenging part in this whole technology solution?
Yeah, I think for a couple of applications, getting the authentication part from the user experience perspective was the most challenging.
Hmm. Okay. So, okay. Is it possible for you to elaborate a little bit more, like what user experience you are expecting and what you were achieved in the end?
Yeah, primarily single sign-on is what we were expecting. So that the user does not have to sign on again when he's switching from, say, application one of vendor one to application two of vendor two. Um, I
Mm.
think we were not able to achieve that because there were a couple of things we were using a third-party IDA solution. Uh, Also, the applications did not support SAML 2.0.
Okay.
So, from authentication protocol perspective, I think there were some challenges or shortcomings. So, perhaps it's going to be a custom work. Maybe if all is approved and there is still some room to create a phase three, maybe.
Okay, okay. So, if I stretch the imagination a little bit, let us say your customer did not give you any constraint saying, "Hey, I want you to reimagine this workload for me in cloud, fully native." Then, in that case, what would you have chosen for even running it workload is, and you mentioned IDaaS, like probably it's an Active Directory or Azure AD. What would you choose natively in the cloud for compute and authentication and monitoring?
Yeah, from authentication perspective, I can think of two, Okta and Auth0, which
Hmm. I
uh,
think both are the same now, or one bought the other, something like that.
yeah,
Anyway, let us continue.
I haven't followed the news lately on these applications, but yeah, it would be nice if they merge, so we get best of both the worlds. Actually, they were top two. I think I've tried both of them, were pretty good. But this was one of the items I think I would have chosen to do.
Okay. Yeah. I just googled it. Okta is going to buy Auth0 now. It just came in about a few weeks back. Anyway, so you are saying that you will be using Okta for authentication, and would you still be using workspaces, or do you think, like you also mentioned AppStream somewhere in the beginning? So, which one would you choose if you want to do this architecture natively?
Yeah, I would choose AppStream. I would choose AppStream.
Okay, AppStream, fantastic. Okay, so let us move on to the next project. Since we are already running out of time here, let us try to package everything here. So the other project, can you elaborate? What was the other project? Okay, before closing this one, was your customer happy that where you solved the stability issues that was initially there, and now it is running on cloud, or what is the situation of this project now?
Yeah, the application went live a few weeks back. It's been
Mm-hmm.
stable. There are some minor hiccups, I wouldn't say incidents or issues with the application. So we are updating smaller pieces to make it more robust. But yeah, no major issues from network perspective, as in bandwidth perspective. No issues from the availability perspective. So I think the primary pain points uh, have been addressed. All the applications are running in a cluster, so they all of them have a clustering enabled. As in, there is a failover.
Okay. There is a very interesting question. I definitely need to ask you this one. I cannot hold this one. This is one common question that I really want to know. I put up this question on the screen because this almost always happens, right? As a solutions architect, you make so many solutions, so many discussions. At some time, you will also fail, or at least personally, I have failed, and customer had to correct me. No, that doesn't work. We need to go back to the drawing board and do it. So please, can you share some experience where your design was needed more work? Let us put it that way.
Yeah, indeed. As in, yeah, in complex projects, there is. Yeah, I've personally faced this as well. So
Hmm.
in this project as well, there were a couple of items that were completely off radar.
Hmm.
And then at the last minute we had to get back to the drawing board, get the requirements, and the workspaces that I mentioned was not in the picture at all.
Hmm. Hmm.
As in, we had not even thought about it. uh, yeah, it was missed perhaps from my perspective, and the questions or the questionnaire that we normally send at the start or discuss, so it was not captured correctly, and it was assumption that I made. And
Okay.
so we
Okay.
had to go back to the drawing board, and then yeah, the onus was on me and my team that we have to deliver it quickly.
Hmm.
We tried our best, and I think we were able to make it in time.
Nice. I can also share that. I think we had this another project where we went ahead with EC2, and the customer said, "I want serverless." Go back
Oh
to the
yes,
drawing board.
oh yes,
Probably we can discuss about it in the future for another day with the architecture diagram and go through what was the requirements and then go into why that was the discussion.
yeah, I absolutely remember. We'll come back to that at a later stage.
Fantastic, thank you. So let us move on now that the project is delivered and customer is happy. Let us move on to the other project that you spoke about. Now you know what you are discussing, right? Can you give me the where it started?
Yeah, I think one last point before we move on to
Yeah,
the next
yeah.
one.
Go ahead.
Um, yeah, basically, it's not always hunky dory. It's not always positive. The story that I portrayed is about the success, but we failed at a lot of steps. I think that was also the question to answer it completely. There were a lot of issues while we were doing this project, and as in the team had to come back into a huddle and discuss the issues again, and we had to get new ideas to tackle smaller issues. For example, integration problems. Some application is sending a XML from some environment which is not connected, and how do we get it to the application? So there were a lot of smaller issues within the application migration project.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not all happy story. We were able to finish the project in time because there were a lot of parties involved, and there were delays from not just us but from other parties as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we managed to put it together as per the expected date. So
Okay. That is another challenging part, right? To manage when you manage people and technology, there is like the schedule part of it. People want to deliver something in 3 weeks, irrespective of the difficulty. They just come up with the timelines and say, "Yeah, I want it done. Go figure out."
yeah, that is
Yeah,
case 99% of the time.
time. Yeah, true.
I
So,
think
so the,
the
go
reason
ahead.
is they expect cloud as the magic bullet, as
So,
in
is it not? I thought when you move everything to the cloud, everything goes away. All your problems goes away. That's what Amazon says. High availability, disaster recovery, resilience. You just migrate to the cloud, everything is solved for you. Is it not the case?
this question coming from you, but I understand why you're asking. uh, yeah, as in AWS provides all the building blocks, but I think deep understanding of each service is really needed to make it work. So
Mm.
it is not a package service, as in what is offered from AWS are building blocks, and you have to get it, put it all together, plumb it together, stick it together to make it work.
So what you're saying is the if I can fall back to the wordings, it is a kind of a shared responsibility. Like they do take care of something, and you need to do take care of something, and you need to use all the tools that are at your disposal.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's very true. It's a shared responsibility, and I think you can post that shared responsibility model from AWS as well. That would make things very clear.
Yeah, let me pick up that link if I can find it. Okay. While I try to find the shared responsibility model that you are referring to into the chat for the community, let us start with the next project that we wanted to discuss on with the community here. So, where this new project started?
Yeah, the next one was actually the first project that I did for this specific client or customer. It was creating a foundation. They did not have uh, a footprint on AWS, and they came up to us saying, we would like to build a foundation, and can you help us with it? So, as in the discussions went on for a couple of months with all the enterprise architects and head of architecture as well. They wanted to know everything, as in from budget to every tiny details, what standards, what tools we will put in, what services we will put in, and how will it look, and um, what all kind of applications we can put in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so primarily, we categorized all the applications because the spread was quite big. They had a lot of traditional applications and legacy applications, but they also had uh, instance as in server-based cloud-hosted applications, and they were creating new custom applications which were serverless or container-based. So
Mm-hmm.
we had to look at all type of applications that could land on a single landing zone or a single foundation. So so this was quite a big project, but yeah, it was an interesting one because then we were looking at all different streams of a landing zone or a foundation, and we
Mm-hmm.
were touching upon different streams of a technology stack.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So I'm just trying to understand, and the requirement itself, it is so wide, right? That they want to do virtual machines, they want to do containers, they want to do serverless architecture, all has to run on the same place. So I'm just based on my knowledge, I'm saying I usually build one VPC with 5 or 6 subnets. But do you think as something as simple as that will work out for this, or where did you go from knowing to build an VPC to doing something like this? How did you start this journey?
Yes, and yeah, there were quite some discussions. I think you were part of it as well in the start when we were working together uh, to determine whether a single VPC would work or multiple VPC would work, single account structure would work or a multi-account structure would work.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that was from an overall perspective how the entire foundation would look like, what services we would put in on the accounts, how do we segregate the accounts, and what are the services we'll put in where.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we were touching upon the standards.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of tooling standards we will follow, what kind of design principles we will put down on paper,
Mm-hmm.
so that we have a guardrail or a framework that can be
Mm-hmm.
followed by different teams, different type of applications. uh, yeah, primarily identity, how will authentication authorization will work for different kind of applications, so creating patterns for different type of applications and services that can support them.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. So it looks like quite a bit of activity is required to achieve this or realize this architecture, right? So before I go ahead and dive on like how you built it and what other components in AWS you looked at, I want to understand this question. There is a typical dilemma between buy versus build as a simple comparison. What I mean by that, for people who are not aware of that, is like, is there a ready-made solution that I can go ahead and buy in the market and start using it, or should I go ahead and build something custom so that it meets 100% of my requirements? So between this buy and build conversations, now what I feel is you are saying that you went ahead and built something for this customer. Did you look at something that was available in the market, or there was nothing available in the market?
Yeah, we did a lot of research, of course. This was precisely the discussion we were having, buy or build.
Mm-hmm.
uh, we also did create a principle around it. We use cloud native first
Mm-hmm.
before building something custom by ourselves. It has some uh, the rationals are, I think, some of them are quite clear. As in, managing, maintaining a custom build application is a lot of work,
Mm-hmm.
uh, rather than something that we take off the shelf because it will be managed by the vendor or supplier. So primarily, that was one of the principles, to look at cloud native services first before creating anything custom. Um, I think when I say foundation, we did use AWS services, for example, landing zone, so that the account structures can be created as it can be standardized. So whatever accounts that we are creating will have certain set of services and applications inside it, to, for example, monitoring services, security guardrails, for example, guard duty, config
Mm-hmm.
rules will be added, and things like that. So we did use primarily all the AWS services at our disposal.
Okay. Okay. So you did a market research and it did not meet some of the requirements, and you did go ahead with consuming things natively. So let us go back to our conversation. So we are deciding to build this landing zone, as we call it. And was there not a typical landing zone? Because I just did a quick Googling and then I found out that there is AWS gives some guidance. I just put the link also. So does something like this will work, or the customer's requirement is so different that you need to go ahead and build other pieces?
Yeah, true. So, like I said, we did use AWS's service landing zone. So
Mm-hmm.
that does provide you with a multi-account structure.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but then we had to decide upon standards from networking perspective, how many VPCs we need, how many subnets we need in each VPC and stuff. So that was decided upon cost analysis basis. How many, we divided applications into different categories. We divided them into cloud hosted and cloud native application, so that we have a clear distinction of which kind of application goes where.
Mm-hmm.
So that we have, for example, we can have, depending on the size and type of application, we can create a smaller CIDR range of for the VPC, so as to save the IP block, even though it is an internal private IP range, but still it efficient use of IPs basically. Um, there were
Okay.
networking or integration related questions that had to be addressed. So the landing zone does provide connectivity, yes, but we did connect because they had some footprint on Azure as well. They had a lot of applications there, so we had to interconnect them as well.
Mm. It makes sense. This is one of my favorite topics. I have tried to answer this in my channel as well. You spoke about how many VPCs and how to split the subnets. We discussed this some time back as well. It's like, what is your go-to tool, right? There is a bit of a math involved because not everybody understands what is an IPv4 subnets, how many IP addresses will be in each subnet, or how many I need. Is there any quick shortcuts that people can use, or they have to learn it the hard way only?
Yeah, I use couple of tools, as in one of them is davidc.net, I think, and the other one is online subnet calculator. Both are um, online tools, so you can
Mm-hmm.
put in your CIDR range, the masks, how many hosts do you need, or the other way around, and it will spit out useful visual information that you can
Mm-hmm.
use. I think uh, most of the ranges by experience I already remember, but I always double check it with these tools.
Okay. If you're remembering it, you are truly a networking guy, right? That shows that you are your foundation or where you started is coming forward. Like I see this question coming up quite often. And also, like if you're a system administrator or network administrator, when I go to the cloud, does my skills be useful or become invalidated? Now, what you are saying is you have networking knowledge and it helps you to build multi-account VPCs, multi AC VPCs very easily natively without any thinking.
Yeah, sorry, I lost you for a bit. Could you
Okay.
ask that again?
Okay. What I was saying is, your the skills that you earned in your previous roles, like as a network administrator, is coming and helping you in your cloud solutions architect role, right? So sometimes this question comes up: should I switch role, and then all my experience goes waste now?
Yeah, that's a very good one, because yeah, to my friends and to my colleagues, we always keep discussing this. Your experience never goes waste. Your basics is something that will always come to your rescue. So, for
Hmm.
example, if you're from a networking background, if you've learned all the difficult stuff, subnettings, yeah, and stateless interdomain routing and stuff, I think all of it will come to you in one or the other project.
Okay.
Uh, Basically, just an example, as in I did work on a telephony system, VoIP system, open source one, long
Hmm.
time back, and that is what I had to use, as in the basics of that were used in the migration project of a security management application. So yeah, it does help you get a better understanding. And yeah, let me repeat that: whatever you learned before, your experience never goes waste.
Yeah. Okay. So this is another interesting question which just came in just now. Let me see if I can pop up and get your comment on that. So this is like when you are a new person, you are trying to learn something. It's like, what is the maximum number of servers you have had in your architectures? Is there even a limit like that, or is it even something that you need to worry about?
Yeah, as in there is always a limit. You need to have a maximum number predetermined, so that you can there are soft limits or there are limits of every cloud provider for services
Hmm.
that needs to be taken into account. So, for example, the default number of VPCs on an account are five in a region. So, if you want to create more VPCs on the fly with your automation or pipelines, you need to make sure that those limits are already stretched or increased so that you can meet up with your requirement. And coming to the servers question, yeah, I remember we were testing an application to auto scale, and we did add about 180 servers behind the load balancer. Some of them were uh, not under auto scaling. Some of them were under auto scaling launch configuration. But I think around 180 servers is what I've
Yeah.
put in the application cluster.
Yeah, I understand we are discussing the landing zone project and people thinking we are suddenly jumped into server calculation. The reason I wanted to pick up this question is when you're doing a landing zone or a foundation, you need to know the VPC and how many IPs we need to know. So that also understands the question, right? This is the maximum number of workloads that I can run, and my workload are going to scale up or down. So this question also comes in somewhere in your discussions in your architectural principles, like this is the maximum I want in Kubernetes, you have those pods concept, right? You want to have the
Exactly.
pods and then you want them to spread across your nodes. Likewise, here also you have availability zones you need to spread across. Uh, so that's why I wanted to bring it up. So let us go back to your landing zone project. So what tools did you eventually use to build that project? Was it you used a cloud formation and wrote out all the landing zone configurations, hard coded all the values, and how did you go about that?
Yeah. Our primary go-to tool was Terraform, uh, but there are a lot of services that cannot be done with Terraform. So we are also using CloudFormation, and some of them we just use AWS CLI, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But the primary tool that we use is Terraform.
Okay. Okay. So, I know that Terraform supports variables, and most infrastructure as code tools supports variables to parameterize so that you can reuse your templates. So, did you use those best practices of those tools, or how was your team structured? Like all your team members are like super heroes in Terraform.
No, absolutely not. When we started, I think we did not have any background of Terraform. Um,
Hmm.
but I think it was a conscious choice to use Terraform because uh, we have uh, we are also using Azure, and we are also supporting a lot of different clients, customers. So so I think at the back of the mind it was that, like I said, standardization. So
Hmm.
if you use a standard tool, it can definitely go cross team, and we can support them, and they can support us when it's really needed.
Mm.
So it's not one over the other, but it was a choice that we made to take or select this tool.
Yep, yep. So you chose a tool which is comfortable to deploy to multiple clouds. So if you have to make a choice tomorrow, what would be a criteria? Because quite often this question also comes, right? What should I learn? Should I learn CloudFormation? Should I learn Terraform? Should I learn Ansible or some other tool that might be fancy out there? What should what should you learn? What would you say there? How do you choose?
Yeah, that's a difficult one, but I think Terraform Cloud Formation, they normally use JSON. Uh, yeah, so primarily, if you learn one of them,
Mm-hmm.
switching to the other one is easier.
Okay. Okay. So going back to our landing zone conversation, you said that so now we have got our requirements, we got our VPCs, we got our subnets, we have coded them into Terraform. How did you release this into your? If I remember, I'm not very familiar with the Terraform, so if I'm saying something stupid, stop me here. So you need something like a Terraform server to deploy this, or how do you go ahead and deploy this Terraform templates?
Yeah, we are using AWS services, so we are using Code Pipeline, and
Hmm.
what we do is we use the code build service to initialize Terraform and then deploy it from there. So plan it and
Okay.
then deploy it from the
Okay.
code build agent itself.
Okay. So you are saying there is some kind of a CI/CD process for deploying even the foundation also.
Yes.
Okay. So you can incrementally change new features into your landing zone now using the CI/CD pipeline. Can you talk a little bit on your CI/CD pipeline? Like, what does let us, for the sake of argument, call these people as sysops or system developers, because they are building the foundation and they are committing the code or sitting in the laptop and committing that or writing the Terraform code. What happens from this point to deploying it in the cloud?
Yeah, basically we are using AWS code commit as our repository, and
Okay.
it is outside a customer's account. Uh, in our case, and that is already built, and the templates that we use are stored, and we deployed from there into say the first customer, and basically, like you mentioned, if there is an incremental update that we want to push to say customer one or multiple customers, we can do it from that repository.
Okay. And how many let us say developers, this ops developers that you have in your team for doing this?
Yeah, we don't have a very big team. Yeah, it keeps varying depending upon the time at which you ask me, but normally
Okay.
about 4 or 5 people.
Okay. And all of these people are aware of Terraform, or they're being given some training to learn Terraform and do the work they're doing.
Yes, that's right. So that is the minimum requirement, as in we are not even talking about uh, the application or building of a application for the project, but yeah,
Hmm.
primarily they know Terraform.
Okay. Okay. Now we spoke about the building the landing zone, the requirements, and then writing the Terraform templates and using code build to build the templates and deploying it. So is it already realized? Is this foundation is already running, and then the workloads are running on top of it? Has it been handed over to the customer?
Yes, that's right. So it's live, and after that we also made some other applications live on that foundation.
That is nice. Good. Good. So there is this interesting question. This is coming from another subscriber of ours. Let me see if I can pop it up so you can also see it. Because recently I faced a similar question from my customer as well. It's a very deep question, but I think we can touch a little bit on security and how to mitigate it. So today, quite often DDoS attacks is quite common, right? So in your foundation or in your workload, when you want to do DDoS mitigation, what do you do? What,
Yeah, depending on the type of architecture that you have built for the application. So let's assume it's a serverless application with your primary application on a S3 bucket, and you protect it with Cloudfront.
yep,
I think
perfect.
that is what we normally do, so that to mitigate this problem. And if
Hmm.
there is an additional requirement, of course, we can add VAF on top of it.
Yep, yep, perfect. Yeah, this is a very interesting topic because this happened to me last week. Yeah, there was an attack happening, and then we were trying to protect a workload over the last period of 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then the customer did not have CloudFront, and the workload used to go offline almost instantaneously, like within 1 minute or 2 minutes before even the WAF rules could kick in, because the WAF has some 30 seconds or something like that. There is a window before it identifies the rules and starts protecting the workload. But this workload was taken offline even before that. So then we go ahead and send them saying, hey, you need to add WAF rules which are dynamic, not like a particular set patterns. And then we have to do CloudFront. And they started with one recommendation after the other. The first one was like CloudFront, but there was a lot of, let us say, uh, resistance for CloudFront. But once we overcome that and put CloudFront, it solved almost like 80% of the problem. We are trying to solve the remaining 20% of the problem now. That is how important I felt the CloudFront was in DDoS attacks prevention.
Yeah, that's
Any,
right. I have a similar experience. So, yeah, as in CloudFront is your first point of protection for DDoS kind of attacks. Um, and of course, if there are any additional rules that you would like to add, I think VAF can be used. Or if you have a different kind of architecture, I think using a load balancer and adding a VAF on top of it is also suggested.
yeah, yeah, nice. So far we talked about different projects that you worked on, how the project is from requirements to delivery. So if I ask you to choose one project that you are either working on or already worked, what would be that you're most proud of?
Yeah, that's a difficult one because yeah, I think the security management project was really challenging. Yeah, not from the technology front perspective, but how each and every piece uh, had to be as in glued in because it was not all cloud native. I think that was the project that I would select.
Okay, nice, nice. Fantastic. So now, as a solutions architect, you will be using a lot of tools on your day-to-day life. Can you talk about the tools that you use or the platforms, or what makes your job easier?
Yeah, I think uh, most of the designing work it's using Visio, but I would
Mhm.
say maybe you will be surprised, but I use PowerPoint a lot to make my designs.
Okay.
Very easy to use. I think all the tools, once you get used to it, I think are easy. But the simplicity sometimes really adds to it. Uh, yeah, there are really nice tools online as well, draw.io and Glyphy as well. And I think,
Yeah, let us put it. PowerPoint is the go-to place for most of the stuff.
yeah, for
Yeah,
designing. But apart from that, I think Visual Studio.
of course, the mother of all. Anyway, do you use any other tools for diagramming? Like, do you use for coding or troubleshooting, or how do you like you use Putty or anything like that in your every day-to-day life?
Yeah, I use Putty and I use mRemote NG.
Okay, okay. Hmm. Let me Google that link and then share it for the people. So just moving forward, there's just a few more things that I want to discuss today. So we touched upon this, so I'm just going to briefly overlook this. If you have to choose one challenging task that you have faced in your career, what would that be?
Technically or
Let us start
expectation
technically.
management. Uh, yeah, I think it was with the landing zone project because we were doing a lot of identity related stuff
Hmm.
uh, to create different patterns, and some applications needed pre-authentication. So they needed to be authenticated even before any request hits the server.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think I would say that was the most challenging one to solve.
Mm, nice, nice. The authentication piece is, I don't think so that problem goes away whether you're in cloud or on-prem, and it is always difficult to solve. Security is always hard.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
no doubt about that one.
Okay. Okay. We are almost coming to the close. So there's a couple of topics that I wanted to pick your brains on. So let me bring this up. Okay, I think you should be able to see this now. What is your go-to place for getting help? Like we spoke about your challenging project, right? Let us say you know authentication, you know security, so you can answer that. But if that question comes to somebody who has not faced it, like if not everybody works only on the domain that you know about. So quite often you need to stretch yourself on domains that you don't know about. So where do you go and find help?
Yeah, most of the time it's without a doubt, I think Google. Uh, but I think Stack Overflow really helps uh, getting close to the answer if it has been already solved or not. Um, I think, yeah, Yeah, apart from
Hmm.
that, my own documentation, because of different types of projects and the design documentation that I've already done. So
Hmm.
it's generally somewhere hidden in one of the documents that I already have, or tips and tricks notes that I keep. Try to find something there. But I
Hmm.
think primarily online tools would be Stack Overflow and Google.
I probably picking up with this comment slightly out of context. I should have picked it up when we were talking about challenges. I'm just going to bring up this comment from another user. Uh, uh, what is the most challenging things that you face when you're doing on serverless applications? Because everybody talks about serverless or event-driven lambdas. You also spoke about lambdas in your security project, which is a serverless compute platform. So, what was the most challenging thing when you're designing an serverless application?
Yeah, I think it. We had application where the requirement was that um, the response of the application should be within less than in 3 milliseconds or zero point 0.3
Hmm.
seconds,
Hmm.
and otherwise the application that we are building would be rendered useless. So there was a bypass mechanism. If we are able to respond within that time, then the application helps. Otherwise, it's bypassed. So I
Okay.
think that made us really think what services we should select, whether we go with, say, a Lambda, or we go with a Fargate, or we go with, say, ECS container, or we just put it on our instance and get it running. But I think
Okay.
we also had an additional requirement that we wanted to containerize that application. It had a lot of dependencies, and it had to be moved across platforms. So so we had to narrow it down to a container platform, basically.
Okay. Okay. So, depending upon the workload, you're saying the challenges will increase. Either it is the latency requirement or maintainability, whether it is containers or serverless. Different types of maintainability for those requirements, right?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, of course it always depends on the requirements. That's true. So in the previous example, in the project that I was working previously, it was more to do with high availability as a big requirement, and to meet it, adding a lot of Lambda patches to solve those problems.
Hmm.
And primarily in another application where the latency was an important point, it had to be addressed.
Yep. Yep. So these things never goes away. Security, latency, networking, access management. Yeah. So this is another topic that I wanted to get you talking about. I know that you mentioned that Corona has changed the way that we are working and how much time we have to learn or how much time we can spend on other things. But still, what do you think is the most exciting thing that you want to know or you are going to learn or planning to learn?
Yeah, I think recently, as part of the standardization of CICD, we are
Hmm.
trying to integrate or merge different pipelines. So that is where my focus is. That is what I'm currently learning.
Okay. So basically, you have multiple pipelines, multiple branches, and you want to streamline that so that it's easier to manage and maintain.
Yeah, as in to add to it, I think different suppliers using different tools.
Okay.
Eventually, there has to be, as in pipeline of pipelines.
Okay.
So,
This is
so,
inception
so
level automation.
yeah, trying to make it simpler, so that we can integrate maybe in the repository directly to the existing pipeline of pipelines, but looking at different venues, different options available. So it's still work in progress, and that is what I'm learning primarily.
Okay. Yeah. So if I stretch the imagination here a little bit and ask you, what do you think the future is? Like, where do you think people should be focusing on learning new things? Like, what would be your best advice? Like, learn this, or try to know about this feature, this service. It could be anything like Azure DevOps, for example, or Terraform or Kubernetes using Terraform.
Yeah, depending on what domain, what level, what profile you're working on. Yeah, from DevOps perspective, if you're more inclined towards managing pipelines and creating that, I think
Hmm.
focus on one specific tool that you're currently using, master it, because the concepts remains the same.
Hmm.
Going to say another tool. So, for example, if you're using say Jenkins and you want to move to Azure DevOps or AWS Cloud Pipeline, most of the concepts they remain same, and that is what will help you understand different new tools quicker.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, primarily, if you're focusing more from infra perspective, I think just focus on the ways that you use to troubleshoot. Um, it could be on open source platform or Windows platform. Again, the basics is what will get you towards your solution faster.
Nice, nice. So I'm done with my usual stuff. I wanted to pick up a couple of customer or subscriber questions. I brought up one of them, which talks about if you want to grow as an AWS solutions architect, what do they keep in mind? I know you touched upon it sometime now, but if you have to summarize it in one or two lines, what would that be?
Yeah, primarily read, understand about different services that are offered. I think you would have seen if you're an aspiring architect. I think you would have seen issues while working as a engineer or system admin or DevOps admin. And moving on to architectural role, you are trying to solve those problems before they come in. So you're designing something. So look at different solutions, different offerings from say AWS, and try to read it through.
Hmm. Okay, you are saying that you need to have a holistic view of different services, how to solve them, how to do them, and then have good grasp on the foundation.
Yeah, exactly. As in, foundation is where you will start your solution with, and perhaps your reading and your experience will uh, show you what problems would come in future, and you're trying to already mitigate that in your design.
Nice, nice. Do you have any last words before we wind up for the day?
No, I think thank you everyone for joining the session and asking interesting questions to make it more interesting. Drop in your comments, questions. We'll try to answer them.
Yep. Thank you very much for everybody who's joining into today's live stream. Next week, probably we will take in a deeper look into a particular architecture and discuss it. I know we have been promising this for quite some time. Probably we will do a live session where we show the architecture and also deploy it and then show you how it is done on AWS. Thank you very much. See you in the next live stream. Have a great
Good
weekend.
luck. Bye bye, guys.